beautiful day in the Northwest, and I am aboard a brand new Specialized Enduro Elite. It's a large travel 29 mountain crusher. It's got 170 millimeters travel up front. This bike is quite massive. They sent us the S4 sizing. It's got just under a 490 millimeter reach, so a massive front end. I'm usually on large size bikes, and I'm glad that we ended up with one of the longer bikes, because going for the bigger size in this particular style of bike only kind of enhances some of the big mountain riding characteristics of the bike. Starting with the climb, this bike is definitely a whole new genre from Specialized. It's got a huge chainstay. It's got like a 76-degree C-tube angle, but with those massive chainstays, you feel super centered between the two wheels climbing. And this bike just clambers up some of the gnarlier steep climbs. It's kind of strange because you pick the bike up and it's just massive. It's got a huge wheelbase, and you think it's just gonna be heavy and pedal terribly just because of the size. And you pick it up and it's quite lightweight. It's got this very light carbon frame, and then you go to pedal it, you're not getting a bunch of rear shock squats, and it just feels kind of zippy, which is so funny on a 170 millimeter bike. Such a good choice for a rider who's got a big day ahead of them and then a super gnarly descent. Okay, so to illustrate how good this bike is at climbing, this is like a 15% to 20% grade. This little push up to the summit. And oh my God, this bike, just like no problem. Put my butt back on the seat. Front end stays planted. Insane. All right, finally for the good part of this review, time to point this big beast downhill. Spoiler alert, it's quite good at going downhill, as you can imagine. Very fast. Yeah, this bike's definitely a bit of a magic carpet ride with these massive tires and quite plush suspension. This is definitely one of the more plush big bikes I've ever been on. Just super supple off the top. Just eats up all that stuff like no problem. It's also pretty dang playful. We're having a massive chainstay on the rear end. I do find myself kind of moving my weight back and forth a little bit more than I would on some shorter wheelbase bikes. Just got to put a little bit more English on this big of a bike to get it to go around tight corners. But as far as straight line gnar, whether it's steeps or in this case more like routes and high speeds, this bike absolutely just crushes it, just eats it up. The only knock I could possibly give this bike was these big tires are just a hair more vague than I'm used to. They're just so big that it's hard to know exactly where your weight is on them. But with that being said, they really gobble up the trail, which is very nice on your wrists. Woo! Just gonna send this one, Billy. I just sent that so deep, and this bike just absolutely gobbles it up. This bike is just so plush, so soft. I feel like that big linkage on the back of the bike you know, might flex just a little bit, but in a very pleasing way. This bike is just like butter to ride. It's so comfortable, especially with these big tires. Woo! And it just kind of urges you to push harder, especially in straight lines. Like in straight line gnar, you just can't really go hard or fast enough to make this bike flex. Woo! This bike still corners really well. It's just a little bit less snappy to initiate a corner, to just oh, so fast. It's just a little bit more effort to pitch this bike over. And also, as I mentioned, you gotta kind of transfer your weight front to rear just a little bit more exaggerated on this big of a wheelbase. As far as the components that this bike has, just pretty much a full SRAM group set. Super plush Lyric up front with that 170 millimeters of travel. Woo! And the Kodar brakes are a great spec choice. Should come as no surprise that this bike just wants to get crazy, and it makes crazy things feel, you know, pretty straightforward, because it really is just a bit of a downhill bike, isn't it? And just a downhill bike that pedals so good. Wow, I don't think I've ever held quite that much speed through that section. That was absurd. Oh, what a bike. You definitely can still kind of snap this thing around as far as pressing it into a jump, but it's definitely not the most like aggressive, snappy bike out there. Oh man, it's just so plush. My wrists are usually pretty tired by this point in the trail. I'm just feeling great still. Woo! I mean, it's not the kind of day where your bike feels soft. It's quite dry out here today, but yet this bike just feels so plush. So who is this bike for? I mean, obviously this bike is for somebody that's looking to do gnarly stuff. I definitely would not recommend this bike unless you're just mocking down trails at 20 plus mile an hour, or unless you're riding like -20, -30 grade descents, because there are more snappy, kind of playful bikes out there. But if you've got some big missions where you need to pedal up to the top of a mountain and shred the way down, and you want a bike that's gonna help you to push your limits, look no further. I mean, this bike is pretty lightweight for its travel, super good pedaler, and just pretty amazing all around. Yep. And if you like the feeling of a magic carpet ride through the woods when there's just rocks and roots all around you, then this is definitely your bike. Oh my God. So plush. If I even need to mention, this thing is extremely stable at speed. So if you like this review, consider subscribing to the YouTube channel. And for more content like this, head on over to freehubmag.com.